This is AIM Agenda. With me now, Liberal MP Tim Wilson and Labor MP Peter Khalil. Gentlemen, good to see you both. We're going to talk about energy and also One Nation. We'll get to that in a moment, but just something I've had told to me this morning by a few government sources is that the Washington Embassy, Australia's embassy, Joe Hockey, looking at a number of dates for a visit to the White House. It could come within the next month or two, possibly before the May budget, I'm told, this visit, Peter. Important, do you think, in terms of getting some face-to-face time with Trump? We've seen Shinzo Abe very keen to get there, and the very concerning developments on the Korean Peninsula last couple of days. But from a foreign policy perspective, what's your view on that?
Look, obviously the Prime Minister didn't get off to a very good start in the relationship, so I think it is important to have that interaction. I mean, I'm very concerned about the North Korean missile tests today. And Shinzo Abe happened to be in Washington when that was happening. So anything that helps Australia and its national interest and ensure that there's stability and security in the Asia-Pacific is something to be supported. But again, I think it was quite obvious that once the President had got into the hot seat in the Oval Office, there was going to be all sorts of tests on this President, and North Korea's begun that process.
And we've seen Tim Wilson, just in relation to the Prime Minister's visit at some stage over the coming months, the House Armed Services Committee ranking member Adam Smith, the House Foreign Affairs Committee ranking member Elliot Engel, both Democrats, have called for the Prime Minister to be given the opportunity to address the Congress. This, as I understand it, though, is a decision that ultimately will be made by the Speaker, Paul Ryan, but that would be a good opportunity to once again argue the case for the alliance, even if things might have got off to a rocky start, as Peter pointed out, with the President.
Well, firstly, the alliance is secure. I don't think anybody's really contesting that. There'll always be differences of opinion between good friends, and a country like Australia and the United States can work these out together. Of course, it would be a great opportunity for Prime Minister Turnbull to be able to get FaceTime with the President, but also the enormous privilege to be able to address the Congress. And that is an enormous privilege, and obviously speaks to the volume and the weight that American politicians hold him.
And I think it's important.
If that happens, we don't know. That's not been guaranteed, but the Republicans and Democrats have to support it. Julia Gillard, from memory, did address the Congress.
I think it's important because the fact that congressional leaders in the US are supportive of the Australia-US alliance, supportive of Australia as an ally, and they're very fully aware. John McCain made some very strong comments, and many other Democrats and Republicans. That's critically important for our alliance because it goes beyond any individual president or individual prime minister. It's a relationship that's been built and stood the test of time over almost a century.
Yeah, indeed. And that was good off the back of those, the difficulties around that phone call, but the congressional figures came out in support of the alliance, John McCain among several others.
They didn't just come out, they came out strongly.
Yeah.
And that's where Peter is right on this. This is one of these moments where we have nice bipartisanship.
I don't think it's going to last, but anyway.
No, but what's clear is the message out of the United States is irrespective of moments in time or particular issues, the alliance continues to be strong. And I know that's heartfelt, certainly on the Liberal side of politics, and at least a large part of Labor as well. I'm not saying all of Labor, not necessarily the Greens, but definitely from the coalition, that commitment and enduring strength. But it goes more than just the Prime Minister to the President. It goes down at every level and goes down to the fabric of how we see our place in the region and also, obviously, our security interests.
Indeed. Let's look at the energy issues now, and you're both from Victoria. Hazelwood closes. It is a great state, and Latrobe Valley is a lovely part of the world too. I was there last week, and it's going to be shaken by the closure of Hazelwood, but not just that area. According to the energy market operator, Tim, this is going to have flow-on effects all the way to South Australia, the closure of that big supplier of energy.
Well, no one's under dispute now that there is a very serious issue around energy, and what we've seen is an ideological approach that's been taken by Labor and the Greens on the issue of energy, which has meant that people haven't invested. And what we saw, for instance, was with significant weather events last year and a high dependence on renewable energy system in South Australia simply can't cope. And all it's doing is putting energy security, electricity security, as well as electricity prices up, and making it much harder for Australians to be able to get on with their life and keep the cost of household budgets down.
Now, there have been various reports today in Fairfax today, according to Mark Kenny's report, that there was that advice that it was the storm to blame for that blackout. The government says that it agrees with that advice. However, Peter Khalil, it also points out that the state was made more vulnerable because of that reliance on renewable. The two things aren't mutually exclusive, are they?
Well, there's another word for alternative facts. It's called lies. And Malcolm Turnbull and Josh Frydenberg have been caught red-handed. There's been a clear-cut advice given, professional advice given by the federal regulator, that those blackouts in South Australia last year in September were not caused by the renewable or fossil fuel energy mix. They were because of the severe weather conditions, the severe storm that knocked out all of these transmission towers. And yet they chose to go on a political rant, to politicise this issue and go on a political rant, so much so that Scott Morrison came in with a big chunk of black coal. I hope he didn't get it anywhere near your nice suit, Tim. But the point is, they have been caught red-handed lying about this. They've been given advice that it had to do with a storm. And then we see New South Wales...
But can't you have both things? Can't you have both in the sense that the storm might have been the catalyst for that particular outage? However, the state's more vulnerable because of the overall mix.
Well, the advice given was not... No, sorry, Tim. The advice given was that the blackout was caused because the transmission towers were knocked out, and there's some issues around the interconnector. There's only one interconnector, by the way. We could have built another one 30 years ago. These are the issues. It had nothing to do with the fact that there was renewable energy and wind power being used in South Australia.
When a journalist is highlighting the inconsistencies in your argument, Peter, I think you need to go back and reread your talking points. The fundamental point is right that Kieran just outlined. Yes, there was a significant weather event. There was equally a problem around interconnectors and the consequence of having a high reliability on using wind power as a basis of your energy generation and not being able to cope with it. As a consequence, you got the event. The government is right. It isn't inconsistent with the advice, and this sensationalist false story in the Fairfax Press might give you comfort to be able to have something to say because you don't actually have an answer for what you're going to do when the electricity prices in this country go up, because Labor won't get past its ideological approach on electricity and not prepared to support investment in all types, regard of energy production. The reality is the government was honest, and the talking points on this are fundamentally wrong.
Sorry, so are you saying that the advice from the federal regulator, the market operator, was wrong?
No, I'm saying that there's more to the picture, exactly as Kieran outlined. There is a component of it that was around the interconnector and the problems of infrastructure, particularly around what happens in significant weather events.
So no, we don't go down to Lewis Carroll, we don't go down this rabbit warren. Let me remind you that the advice given was that, and I'm quoting, the generation mix, renewable or fossil, was not to blame for yesterday's events. This is back in September last year. It was a loss of 1,000 megawatts of power in such a short space of time as 20-plus transmission lines fell over because of the severe weather. It had nothing to do with coal or renewable. And you're seeing power blackouts in New South Wales with the highest coal usage anywhere in the Western world.
Peter,
so explain that to me.
I know your talking points say that, but the reality is there was an
influence. Federal regulator.
There was also an influence in what happens when you rely heavily on wind and the problems of spinning turbines, which create too much energy and the system can't cope with it. If you had a mix of energy and was actually able to rely not just on wind but also on coal and gas and other types of electricity,
the fact that just
you would not have had exactly the same problem.
Let me ask you, Peter.
The fact that gas was sitting idle, gas power was sitting idle.
Let me ask you, gentlemen, sorry, I just want to ask you a related issue.
Another false.
Let me just move on, just if I can, to another element of this debate, because it gets to the state Liberal view through Matthew Guy and the South Australian Stephen Marshall, Tim Nichols in Queensland as well. They're not in government, but what they're arguing is what the federal government is saying as well, that the state targets distorting the system. Whether you think this event, and whether we're not going to agree on that this morning, obviously, whether this event had any contribution from renewables at all, but fundamentally, do you think that this distorts the... Tim, you go first.
Kieran, respectfully, to say it has nothing to do with a high dependence on renewables is to go straight down the alternative news, alternative facts, fake news path. Peter has just outlined another alternative fact or fake news, which is to say that there was gas available last week and wasn't a regulator. Well, let's look at what the federal regulator has said in response to allegations from Bill Short and Mark Butler and others.
You can't just
based on whether this is a quote on where our investigations are at. AMO does not accept public statements being made questioning AMO's capacity or that we didn't manage the power system in a safe, secure state. Further, does not accept the assertions that some generators that were available to enter into the market could not do so. So
I like the fact that reading out a Liberal press release. Well, we go to the cut of the thrust of this issue,
from
which
the
is
regulator.
May I answer the question? The cut and thrust of this is about renewable energy targets, right?
Go to it.
Okay. Let's just get to the core of this. If you believe in climate change and if you believe that it's actually an issue, we need to have renewable energy targets. We need to be transitioning our economy to renewable energy. most of business, most of the experts are saying that would provide certainty, particularly getting an ETS, an emissions trading scheme, some certainty around a price on carbon. This is what business wants. And yet you are refusing, your government is refusing to even go there. You're going in the opposite direction,
so can I
building up,
we're
talking about more coal-fired power plants. So what we're saying is renewable energy is part of the future.
Okay, let's hear Tim.
But no, firstly, nobody's disputing that renewable energy has a place as part of a market. So does fossil fuels, gas, coal, other types of generation, except the Labor Party and the Greens, who are taking their ideological approach on this issue at the cost of households. Well, it is.
The Labor Party
and
has
on
very
top of
clear
that,
policy.
we've just heard from Peter Khalil on national television that they are now looking, and Labor are looking at how to introduce a new form of floating carbon tax. That is the reality.
Talking about it, it's an emissions trading scheme. You had one for a week, and then Josh Frydenberg had to do a double backflip.
That is what a carbon
intensity scheme.
It is called a carbon tax.
Malcolm, your own Prime Minister voted for an emissions trading scheme.
The price up,
More
increasing the price.
facts. Come on, Tim.
Well, I'm sorry,
Come on,
Julia Gillard acknowledged
our
that the emissions trading scheme was a carbon tax.
Our viewers are more intelligent than that.
I agree. They understand the history on this issue, and they also understand, even Julia Gillard acknowledged
running out of
that
time,
emissions trading
apparently.
scheme is a carbon tax.
We are out of time,
Too much
gents.
hot air in this room.
No, not at all. It's great to see you both. Peter, Tim, have a good day.
Thanks,
a quick break.
Kieran.
Back in just a moment. Stay with us.
We could power one of the plants ourselves.